Welcome to Kojo's Math. Today we're going to solve multi-step equations. Now we've done a lot of practice with solving one-step equations where we either add or subtract to isolate the variable or we multiply or divide to isolate the variable. I have a new term for you, and it's a new term meaning a vocabulary term, and yes, you must be able to spell it because it's math and you need to know how to spell words. It's called the coefficient. C-O-E-F-F-I-C-I-E-N-T. It's the coefficient. What is the coefficient? The coefficient is the number that is being multiplied by the variable. It's not the number being added or subtracted, it's the number being multiplied by the variable. So if I have 3x, the coefficient, it means 3 times x, so the coefficient is 3. If I have negative 5y, I'm multiplying negative 5 times y, and the coefficient is negative 5. If I have 4xy, I'm multiplying 4 by x and y. Total, 4 times x times y, the coefficient is 4. You need to know that term, so now I need you to memorize that and start being able to use it in class. Alright, so what you're going to do is you're going to use your knowledge of solving one-step equations, but you're going to do multiple steps. And to do that, your goal is to isolate the variable. That's your goal, isolate the variable. By manipulating the equation and using the inverse operations of what's being done to the variable. So we're going to simplify each side of the equation first if necessary. That means we go through and we add or subtract any terms that we need to. We're not going to do that in this section on this lesson. That is coming on the next lesson. But I want you to learn that the first thing you do is you simplify each side of the equation first by adding or subtracting or multiplying. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to add or subtract both sides to isolate the variable. What was the first steps? What was the first equations we learned how to solve? Adding and subtracting, using the inverse of addition and subtraction to isolate the variable to solve the equation. So the first step you're always going to do is you're going to add or subtract to isolate the variable, both sides. Then you're going to divide or multiply based on what the coefficient is with the variable. If the coefficient is multiplying the variable, then you're going to divide both sides. If the coefficient is a fraction, then you're dividing, right? So you're going to multiply both sides by using the reciprocal. And then you're going to check mentally your answer quickly. Alright, so here we go. We have these multi-step equations. What makes them multi-step is the fact that they are 2 steps. Because on the side with the variable, what am I doing to the variable here? Well, I'm multiplying the variable by 4, and then I'm adding 15. I'm multiplying the variable by 4, and then I'm adding 15. Well, I can't do one step because 2 things are being done to the variable. So we start, and I want you to get in the habit of looking, even though you're not going to need to simplify each side, get in the habit. Can I do anything to either side of this equation? No. What's the first thing I do? I go to the addition and subtraction. What number am I adding or subtracting? I'm adding 15. So what's the inverse? I subtract 15 from both sides. Now I bring down the 4 in, and I'm doing 2 steps. Normally, when I added or subtracted before, I knew what m was. I don't. Again, I read this as negative 1 minus 15. Think thermometer, it's 1 below, it drops 15, it's equal to negative 16. I'm multiplying, my coefficient is multiplying the variable to inverse operation, to undo multiplication. I divide both sides by 4, m equals negative 4. See how I'm showing my work? Vertical, step, step. There's 2 steps. I go here. Negative 6x minus 12. I'm multiplying the variable by negative 6 and then I'm subtracting 12. First step. look, I can't do anything to simplify each side of the equation. That's all I can do. I can't add 6x and 12 because I don't know what x is. So I'm subtracting 12. The inverse operation is to add 12 to both sides. That cancels. Yes, I have to show that. I have to bring down my negative 6x and I have to bring down my equals. I read 6 plus 12 is 18. Do you need to put those arrows in there? If you don't need to. It's not necessary. It helps when you're first learning because you don't make mistakes and leave something out. But it's not necessary. I won't require that of your work. I do require that you show me that you're adding 12 to both sides. And now, if we're multiplying, if the coefficient is negative 6 and we're multiplying x by negative 6, what's the inverse operation of multiplying by negative 6? Dividing by negative 6. When I do that, I get x because a negative divided by a negative is a positive, and I get negative 3. Because 18, positive 18 divided by negative 6 is negative 3. Oh boy, I have a fraction. But first, check to see if I can simplify the equation. No. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. Hopefully you're getting the hang of this. I bring down 1/8 in. These cancel. I bring down my equals. And I read this as negative 2 plus 3, which is 1. What do I do now? I multiply because my coefficient is a fraction. My coefficient's a fraction. So I'm dividing. When I'm dividing by a fraction, I'm actually multiplying by the reciprocal. Don't forget that. So immediately, I have to multiply by the reciprocal of 8 over 1. 8 over 1 times 1/8 is 1. 1 in. And then 1 times 8 is 8. Okay. Negative 11y, negative 11 plus 2y. Just because the 2y comes second does not mean that I divide both sides or I subtract 2y. I go to the front. What's the inverse of subtracting 11? Or what's the inverse of adding a negative 11? It's to subtract a negative 11, which means negative 11, which becomes plus 11 on both sides. Cancel, bring down the 2y, bring down the equals. 0 plus 11 is 11. We're going to, the coefficient is 2. We're going to divide both sides by 2, and y equals 11 halves. You can leave it as 11 halves, or you can write 5 and 1/2. Don't write it as a decimal. Just leave it as a fraction. It'll be easier to plug it in. Now I want you to pause the video, and I want you to try these two. 3x plus 5 equals negative 7. 1/3 x minus 7 equals 1. Pause the video. When you're ready, come back. Show your steps and show them in a vertical manner, sequential and in order. Sequential meaning 1, 2, 3. Step, step, step. Okay. Welcome back. Hopefully your work looks something like mine. You'll see here that I subtracted 5 from both sides. I brought down my 3x, and it's negative 7 minus 5, which is negative 12. I divide both sides by 3. X equals negative 4. If I take this and plug this back in, 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. Negative 12 plus 5 is negative 7. Oh boy, 1/3 x minus 7. The fractions really throw some of you off. I'm going to add 7 to both sides, and look what I did. I rewrote this step so that you could see what I'm doing. You do not have to write this and then do this. You can do immediately giant parentheses around here. I just wanted to do that so you could see. I do giant parentheses and I multiply by the reciprocal because fractions represent division. And the inverse operation of division is multiplication. So I multiply both sides by 3 over 1. The 3 over 1 times 1/3 becomes 1x, because a number times its reciprocal is always 1. And the 8 times 3 over 1 is 24. Alright, that's it. Write down 2 things that you've learned about solving multi-step equations, and then 1 question you still have about multi-step equations. Have a great day, and I'll see you in class.